Okay, I have 1 o'clock on my watch, and I think everybody's here. They're still coming in, but we're trying to be prompt and get started. I appreciate everybody being here. Number one, please silence your cell phones. I just had to remind myself to do that, but there's a lot of information that's going to be coming out today, so I want to make sure that I appreciate, and I really do appreciate the people who have concerns and have made signs. I just ask you to be respectful of this entire informational session. I think we're all going to learn an awful lot, a lot of things that we don't know, and I think that's what today is really all about. So I think you're going to hear from most of the principals involved in this mediation, and hopefully we're going to leave here better informed. There will be fact sheets for everybody to take. There will be informational sessions over the next couple of weeks, which I will announce those dates and locations at the end. So there's still a long way to go. This is not going to be a deal today and a shovel tomorrow by any stretch of the imagination. So your input continues to be very important to us, and I do appreciate you all being here. I really want to first start off by thanking the Berkshire Scenic Railroad. This is an amazing organization that has been brought this building back to life. If you saw this building 20 or 30 years ago, it was in pretty bad shape, probably getting close to need to be torn down. But through a strictly 100% volunteer effort, they've restored this station. And our ultimate goal in the Berkshire delegation is try to get rail back on these tracks on a regular basis. But I'd like to give a big shout out to the Berkshire Scenic Railroad, Kevin and Tom and all your team. Thank you very, very much. There's several folks that have been part of this mediation, and I'm just going to blast through their names very quickly, but who are here today. From the EPA, Brian Olson, Dean Tagliaferro, Tim Conway, Bob Chantarullo, Doug Gutrow, Kelsey Dunville, City of Pittsfield, Peter Marchetti and Pete White. From the town of Lenox, Ed Lane, Dave Roach, I think Warren Archie is coming, and Mary Beth Mitz. The Lee Lenox Town Administrator, Chris Ketchen. From the town of Lee, Dave Consolati and Tom Wickham. From Stockbridge, we have Steve Schatz, Jay Vykovsky. From the town of Great Barrington, Steve Bannon, Bill Cook, Kate Burke, Lee Davis, Town Administrator Mark Bruhensky, and Assistant Town Administrator Chris Rembold. From the town of Sheffield, Renee Wood and Martin Mistoff. Berkshire Regional Planning Commission has stepped up in a real big way. Tom Matusko, Nat Carnes, Lauren Garrity, Melissa Preventure. The Berkshire Environmental Action Team, Elia Del Molino, Elizabeth Orenstein. They were part of this whole mitigation and mediation, and I think they've done a pretty decent job, and we'll know more of the details. I'm going to learn a lot today myself. I do want to recognize former U.S. Senator and President of Global Government Affairs for General Electric, Mo Cowan, in the front row. Thank you for being here. Everett Hanford from Senator Elizabeth Warren's office. I think she's kind of tied up today a little bit, maybe. Melissa Olson and my former colleague in the House, Jim Cantwell from Senator Markey's office. Liz Quigley from Congressman Neal's office here. Governor Baker's Western Mass Director, Pat Carnevale, is here. Thank you very much. One Berkshire President, Jonathan Butler, is here as well. Thank you all for taking the time. Anybody that I didn't introduce that wants to say hello? Thank you very much. We're going to get right into this, but
And you forgot the Housatonic River Initiative. Yes. We're part of it.
thank you, Housatonic River Initiative. So my name is Smitty Pignatelli, and I very proudly serve as a state representative for the 4th Berkshire District. And I sincerely want to thank you all for taking the time to be here today. I personally think this is a historic day for the Berkshire community. Today, we're all here together to present you the facts and logistics of the biggest public works project the Berkshires has seen in 150 years. Not only that, but we're here to announce the facts of the biggest environmental cleanup in Berkshire history. In fact, some have said that this is the Boston Harbor cleanup of Berkshire County. Right now, we are standing in the historic Lenox train station, whose construction was completed in 1903. In fact, my own grandparents immigrated to the United States from Italy and walked right through this very station in hopes of creating a better life for themselves here in the Berkshires. I mention this story with you because I believe that's what this collaborative project is all about. Creating a better life for the next generation of Berkshire residents. What makes today so historic is that we are witnessing an unprecedented collaboration between communities, residents, state and federal agencies, and environmental advocates who have come together to recognize that this agreement is bigger than all of us and is bigger than the next election. It's about creating a better Berkshires for the next generation. To explain more about this landmark day and the logistics and the facts of the rollout, I would like to introduce the Regional Administrator for the Environmental Protection Agency, Mr. Dennis Diesel. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Smitty. Good afternoon, Chairman Neal, Senator Markey, state, city, town officials, environmental advocates, representatives from GE, ladies and gentlemen of Berkshire County. Today marks a major turning point in a decades-long attempt to bring about a cleaner and healthier Housatonic River. EPA is proud to join 7 other parties in announcing a landmark cleanup agreement for the cleanup of the Housatonic River. Let me say at the onset that the mayor of the city of Pittsfield, the town leaders of Lee, Lenox, Stockbridge, Great Barrington, and Sheffield, the state of Connecticut, the Massachusetts Audubon Society, the Berkshire Environmental Action Team, or BEAT, and Jeffrey Cook deserve enormous credit for the courage they've shown to actively shape an agreement that will bring a cleaner, healthier river. I would like to also mention those protesting in the back. We may know that the Housatonic River Initiative was also very much involved in the cleanup and the mediation discussions that got us to this milestone. In fact, many of the cleanup improvements in the agreement are a reflection of the close coordination with our partners from the environmental community, like HRI. We respect their right to make their views known and hope they will also share with us their appreciation for the environmental progress that this deal represents. This landmark agreement, which we will hear about today in more detail from all of the speakers, proves that better, faster environmental outcomes can sometimes be achieved through constructive negotiations rather than litigation. Let me take you back to early in 2018. EPA had received the decision from the EPA Environmental Appeals Board, AEB, which endorsed virtually all of EPA's cleanup requirements, but had concern on our decision to require disposal of all PC material out of state. Our team set to work immediately on answering the board's questions, but at the same time decided to step back to see if EPA could pull together interested stakeholders to see if there was one solution that we could all agree upon that would speed up and make stronger the cleanup and provide benefits for the Berkshire communities. This agreement, which we are announcing today, truly is a groundbreaking success, demonstrating the value of bringing together all viewpoints to reach a resolution that far exceeds any individual solution, and the results have been remarkable. This multifaceted agreement contains substantial benefits in many areas. Let me share 3 of the most significant elements of the agreement. First, the highest concentration of PCB contaminated material will be disposed of out of state. This was a non-negotiable position for EPA from the start. Only soil and sediment containing low levels of PCBs will be disposed of on site and at a state-of-the-art landfill on the upper level of the Lane gravel pit in Lee. Second, the agreement provides for the immediate start to cleanup investigation and design with significant enhancements to the 2016 cleanup plan. Examples include additional sediment removal, which eliminates 100 acres of capping in the river, removal of the Columbia Mill and Eagle Mill dams, plus the removal of PCBs behind all 5 dams, more floodplain remediation on residential properties and on the Canoe Meadows Audubon property, elimination of more than 50,000 trucks on roadways right here in Lennoxdale and in Lee, a commitment to further research on innovative technologies, demonstration efforts and pilot studies focused on PCBs, enhanced coordination among stakeholders, and continuous public involvement. Third, there are substantial economic benefits for 6 Berkshire municipalities. totaling $63 million in solid commitments to ensure local government and stakeholders a seat at the table in the cleanup going forward. The cleanup commitments alone make this, combined with EPA's earlier work in Pittsfield, one of New England's biggest cleanups ever. The environmental and economic gains achieved through this agreement will benefit generations to come. But from our perspective, the settlement is historic even beyond its size. The negotiating process and the combined benefits it spawned are both unprecedented. This process was far from the traditional closed-door bargaining involving only government and the parties responsible for pollution. EPA invited a large universe of stakeholders to join the mediation process, which yielded synergistic results far beyond the traditional EPA cleanup agreement. You will again hear from many of them today. Under traditional cleanup models, one can comment on, criticize, or litigate a cleanup plan. However, this outcome was the result of a year-long investment of people representing diverse interests, seated at the table, forging a consensus that will long serve the people and interests in communities and neighborhoods from Pittsfield to Long Island Sound. These 7 parties here today have worked tirelessly to fulfill individual and shared objectives, and the collective benefits this agreement will achieve for the river will be positive, protective, and permanent. There's another group of people who have worked equally as hard and in some cases dedicated their careers to the cleanup, and that's my team at EPA. I'd like to recognize Dean Tagliaferro, who lives here in the Berkshires, Tim Conway, Kelsey Dumville, Bob Chencharulo, and Brian Olson. Could you guys just stand for a second, because you've done an amazing job. Thank you. Finally, as I said at the beginning, each of these parties represented here today deserves enormous credit for creating an atmosphere for positive settlement negotiations. They will have an opportunity next to share why this agreement matters to them and their people that they represent. And then finally, thanks to Smitty, where are you, Smitty, for working from outside the mediation to remind us all of the opportunity that we had to protect the river and its communities. So with that, I will turn it back to Smitty. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. And it's really a pleasure for me to introduce not only a personal friend, but a friend of all of Western Mass for a long time, but especially now in the Berkshires the last several years, but our great Congressman, Richard Neal.
Thanks, Rudy. Thank you. Thanks to Representative Pignatelli and my longtime pal, Eddie Markey, and I'll close with the local officials that are here rather than just opening with them. So I've had a long history in these issues while not in the Berkshires. So I've talked to Silvio Conti about this, John Olver about this, Governor Patrick about this, Governor Baker about this, Rick Sullivan about this, and EPA time and again. And I have a high regard for the recommendations that the EPA makes. It was a transformative establishment in 1968 of the Environmental Protection Agency that helped to make the water we drink, the air we breathe, all much improved. This appeared to be at one time an intractable problem. So if you were on the turnpike from the former district that I had for many years, I represented the Blackstone Valley. Today, the Blackstone River is a heritage river because I worked with Bill Clinton to have that establishment made. Today, it is so much better than it once was. The corridor itself is spectacular because of the investments that have accompanied it. And the Quinnebog-Shetucket, which is a wetland area that we protected, I sponsored that legislation. I had much to do with the establishment of the Blackstone Corridor all of those years and made sure they were funded, but also had the good fortune of helping to work on the Connecticut River, New England's river. So the Connecticut River, we also had simultaneously on the same day with Bill Clinton, we had that designated as a heritage river because of the efforts that John Olver and Sil Conti and myself made over the years with CSOs. So I just point that out to give you some history as we take a listening session today. And there are 3 opportunities for information gathering moments that'll go forward, but there is an opportunity here for the cleanup. and the enhancements that will accompany it, and also from the technology that we intend to want to continue to invest in. There are legacy costs like this all over the country. And I think the desire here is to work with everybody that's here in hoping to bring about a new approach and a new day to bringing a solution to this saga that has gone on for decades. Last point. I started in local government, very unlike most members of Congress. There are very few former mayors in Congress, very few former city councilors in Congress. And why do I call that up? Because the one responsibility that local elected officials have that supersedes perhaps everything else is land use. Never would Ed Markey or Elizabeth Warren or I attempt to substitute our judgment from what the local elected offer in terms of land use. That's the critical consideration. So I've been to untold number of public hearings in my former life, listened carefully, took into consideration the arguments that were being made, pro and con, but also once a decision was made, to try best to ameliorate some of the concerns that people had, and at the same time, also to try to find a path forward. So I think that what EPA has presented to us today with local land use officials, mayors, members of the boards of selectmen, and advocates, all you're looking for today is to continue the conversation on a path forward that has been established by the EPA. Thank you.
Senator Markey told me on the way in that despite this crummy weather today, that he's happy to be out of Washington. So with everything that's going on down there, it's great to have him here. In my opinion, there's probably not a bigger champion in the U.S. Senate for the environment than Senator Markey. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Smitty. You're so right. You know, Richie Neal and I, we're here on a Donald Trump weekend work release program right now. So we're gratefully up here in Massachusetts, where we love all of you and everything that you stand for. And then later on today, we'll be going back down to DC. But it's great, Smitty, to be with you and with my buddy Richie, just such a great leader in the House of Representatives. And Tricia and Mayor Tyre, to Channing and Pat, to Dennis and Mike and Jane and Jeff and Roger and Steve and Becky, the Litany of Saints, Mo Cowan, the Litany of Saints, who have worked to put this together. I'm honored to be with you on a day like today, because today is a day to remember, for we are here to announce an agreement on cleaning up the Housatonic River. Renowned environmentalist David Brower once said, "We must begin thinking like a river if we are to leave a legacy of beauty and life for future generations." And that's because a river touches and impacts everything around it. It feeds heart and mouth and soul. And when it is unhealthy, as the Housatonic has been for decades, we are all unhealthy. But today we have a settlement that is thinking like a river and of a river. It's a settlement that supports health and restoration and sustainability. It's a hard-earned agreement that has engaged multiple communities, offers a measure of justice for past wrongs, and ensures the Housatonic River is enjoyed by future generations, not just through the history books. I applaud all of the leaders here who fought and negotiated, Smitty and Linda, Channing and Pat. I know you've spent countless hours and sleepless nights working on this issue with GE and the EPA. Environmental justice and corporate accountability are long battles, and we know that there is still more to do. Vigilance and monitoring will be key. And I pledge to you to be a cop on the beat, to make sure that we're policing all parties to ensure that they follow through on their promises, those promises that are being made today, and working with the EPA to ensure the agency does everything it promised. We will never again leave these communities without the environmental and health protections which they deserve. And like Richie, I bring to this an environmental perspective that is a part of my history as well. I grew up in Malden. The Malden River was 4 blocks from my house. When my mother said to me as a boy, never swim in the Malden River, it was because I thought there was a song named after it, Purple Haze, because that's what was coming off of the Malden River, because it was used as a dumping ground. All of the companies along the Malden River. I still live in the same house in Malden that I grew up in, 4 blocks from the Malden River. It's now cleaned up. The Tufts rowing crew, their boathouse is on the Malden River, which would have been unimaginable when I was a boy. That's what today represents here. It represents this hope that finally we can look at the past in a rearview mirror and move on to a different and a better future in all of the community's relationship with the river, because it is central to the identity of a community. And that's why I am here, because this is an incredible day. And I want to, again, praise the leaders, the advocates, the activists, the environmentalists, the scientists, the committed residents who have dedicated their careers, their lives to cleaning up this river in their hometowns. This project of reclamation and environmental justice is your legacy. And today, with this settlement announcement, we are all stewards of the Housatonic River and the homes and the health and the land that surround it. That stewardship requires commitment, it requires partnership, it requires accountability, and we recommit ourselves today to that stewardship for the Housatonic River, for the Berkshires, and for the planet. Thank you all for everything you did to make today possible. Thank you, Smitty.
Thank you, Senator. I've dealt with a lot of GE guys in my life from my time as a selectman and a state rep. You know, even though I only met this gentleman half an hour ago, we've spoken on the phone several times just this week in preparation for today, but I've never met anybody who is more genuine, more sincere, and more caring about doing the right thing. And I think I'm very pleased to introduce the Director of Environmental Health and Safety for General Electric, Roger Martella. Thank you very much, Roger, for doing this.
Thank you, Representative Pignatelli. Frankly, I was honored to be invited on behalf of the company, and we're humbled to be able to share a few words with all of you who we know feel very strongly about the condition of the river and understanding what we're going to do to remedy it. 20 years ago, GE committed to work with EPA and the communities to clean the Housatonic River. Over the years, we've remained committed to implementing one of the most extensive river cleanups in our country. We've invested already hundreds of millions of dollars in environmental projects in the Pittsfield area, including the cleanup of the first 2 miles of the river. We've also provided economic development funds to the city of Pittsfield, remediated commercial property for donation to the Pittsfield Economic Development Authority, and provided additional funds to PETA to develop the William Stanley Business Park. For the last several years, we've been largely aligned with EPA and the communities on how to clean the rest of the Housatonic River, but we have had a disagreement about where to dispose the sediment in the soil. Following the EPA judges that you've heard about from the regional administrator decision to revisit the question of where to dispose of the sediment and soil, we decided what to do next. We'd do something different. Rather than dig in stronger on our legal positions, which would only delay action to clean the river for years through the courts, we decided instead to pursue an olive branch with EPA and the surrounding communities. We're proud that standing here today, that effort was worthwhile, and we've come to this important agreement. I've been practicing environmental law for 25 years. I've devoted my entire career to it, my entire life to it to some extent. And what weighs on me these days is 2 things. The issue of time and the issue of uncertainty. And in reaching these agreements, not only did we want to address the river, we want to address both of those issues. We wanted to do it without delay, without protracted delay, and we wanted to resolve the uncertainty. So this agreement makes good on our commitment to a comprehensive cleanup of the Housatonic Resta River that fully protects the environment and it resolves these concerns regarding uncertainty and time. It addresses uncertainty for the environment by providing for a cleanup that EPA, the communities, environmental groups, and GE have all agreed requires GE to clean more PCBs from the river than required under the consent decree. You already heard some description of that. Importantly, it also addresses time. It avoids delay by providing for GE to take steps now to design and implement the rest of the river remedy. And I'm sincere on that. We're going to start this design immediately. This is a far better alternative to more years of protracted litigation, which would delay the cleanup and extend the uncertainty. As part of our partnership, the agreement also provides local communities with substantial additional financial and land resources for development. And we're going to build a state-of-the-art landfill using all appropriate technologies and protections for these circumstances. We'll do this under EPA supervision, and we'll do it with transparency with the public, all of the public. We're confident the landfill will be fully protective. We've also listened to concerns raised by EPA from day one and the community regarding the more contaminated soils and sediments. As you heard from the regional administrator, those will be disposed of outside of Massachusetts, consistent with the agreement and applicable regulations. There's many people who've worked very hard to reach this agreement, and I'd like to just take a minute to acknowledge and thank some of them ourselves on behalf of the company. We'd like to thank the representatives from the 5 towns, Lee, Lenox, Stockbridge, Great Barrington, and Sheffield, who spent many hours working with everyone here to develop this agreement, especially Pat Carlino of the Lee Select Board and Shannon Gibson, former Lenox Selectman, for all your help. We'd like to thank Mayor Linda Tyre of Pittsfield and her staff, who was tireless in this effort. We'd like to thank the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission staff for their hard work, Representative Pignatelli, who was instrumental in working with all the parties involved in these negotiations, Betsy Winfield and her staff at Connecticut and DEEP, Audubon Society and the Berkshire Environmental Action Team, thank you for your efforts. Local Attorney Jeff Cook, who is an essential advocate for neighborhood concerns, Brian Olson of EPA, who has led this effort and his staff, including my former colleague Tim Conway. Thank you for all your work to the EPA team. We'd like to thank John Bickerman, our mediator, who guided us through this process. I'd like to thank my colleagues at GE, past and present, for their years of hard work on this project, including Rod McLaren, another Berkshire resident who extended his retirement to make sure he saw this to conclusion, and Annie Silfer, our outside counsel Jeff Porter from Mintz Levin, Jim Beakey from Sidley Austin, my predecessors Ann Klee and Tom Hill, and many others. So today is not the end of the agreement. I echo those points. You have public information sessions coming up, but it's not the end of the agreement. We believe it's the beginning of a new relationship and many years of hard work that we have together in partnership to realize our shared goals for the cleanup of the Housatonic River. It begins a new chapter in the Berkshires, and we are committed to working with our partners and everyone in this room to implement the cleanup of the Housatonic Rested River without delay. We look forward to partnering with the EPA and the communities on what we all believe will be a successful project. Thank you again, Representative.
There's always one in the crowd that doesn't sit in the assigned seat. I just recognize Senator Hines is here, but thank you very much for joining us. You're supposed to be up here. Thank you for joining us, though. Pat Carlino, longtime selectman, and Lee and Channing Gibson, former selectmen, they've been asked by the 5 total towns to represent the five communities, and I'm going to have them come up together to present the town's perspective.
Better put my glasses on or I can't see a thing. All right. So good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Pat Carlino, and I have been a member of the Town of Lee Select Board for 22 years. In total, I've worked in different capacities for the town, paid and unpaid, for 41 years. Suffice to say, I love my town. I love my community. Any decision I've made over the last 22 years has always been made with the town as a whole in mind. I have to admit, though, this was the hardest thing I've ever been through. When the 5-town committee, known as the Rest of River Municipal Committee, was formed, it was for one reason: to eliminate the threat of another PCB landfill in Berkshire County. At one of our earliest meetings, I made the statement that I will chain myself to the fence before a backhoe comes rolling in. Passionate? Yes. Realistic? No. It soon became apparent to myself and the other Rest of River committee members that we had some troublesome obstacles to deal with. When offered the opportunity to mediate with GE and EPA, our committee said, why not? What could be wrong? We could always get out if we needed to. The litigation costs of appeal were of grave concern. The risk of losing, which was a 50-50 chance, could encourage the outcome of being faced with the possibility of having not one, but 3 landfills in Berkshire County, 2 of them in pristine areas, as well as a much less desirable outcome in regards to the public health and safety for our communities. In the end, my transition from passionate to realistic was the driving force for myself and my Board of Selectmen in agreeing to this settlement. The location of this landfill in the farthest northwest corner of the town of Lee, 1,500 feet away from the river, is currently a heavily disturbed industrial site close to 2 pre-existing municipal landfills, and by far is the best location for this proposed upland facility site. As such, it was unnecessary to mediate over aesthetics, so we focused on the safety issues in regards to the landfill itself as outlined in the technical details of the agreement. So, having said all that, on behalf of my children, my grandchildren, God willing, my great-grandchildren, as well as all the families, present and future, of my community, I mediated. I, along with the other 4 committee members, fought for a safer, less invasive, but more enhanced cleanup of the current toxic landfill in Berkshire County, and by that I mean the Housatonic River. Doing nothing is not an option. It needs to be cleaned up, and we need to do it on our terms.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the federal delegation and the state delegation supporting us up here today, and to all the other partners who are represented in these chairs at the front of the room. I'm Channing Gibson. I have formerly had the honor of serving 2 terms on the Lenox Board of Selectmen, and for the past year and a half, I've served as the board's representative on the 5-town Rest of River Municipal Committee. And while I have lived here a lot fewer years than Pat, I too love my community and am passionate about protecting our deeply beautiful Berkshire's environment, the mountains, woods, and waters that have lured so many people like me and my family to live here. Everyone on our committee shares that same sentiment. Steve Schatz, former selectman from Stockbridge, Chris Rembold, Great Barrington's town planner and assistant town manager, and Renee Wood, current chair of the Sheffield Select Board. All are diligent and dedicated public servants who, along with Pat and me, took the work of our committee very seriously. The mediation for us was not simply a way to wring money out of GE, nor to punish them. We were all keenly aware of our responsibility to act in the best interest of our towns and of our collective community. As Pat said, public health and safety were our paramount concerns, and in addition to our legal counsel, Matt Powa, we hired an environmental consultant to guide us through the scientific and technological complexities of the cleanup and of landfill design to ensure that any decision we made was protective of our citizens to the greatest degree possible. Not everyone will appreciate the historic partnership this deal represents. These issues are passionate issues. They inspire a lot of passion, and that's understandable. But the simple fact is, there were only 2 choices for the towns: either submit to the potentially disastrous risks and costs of a drawn-out litigation process that could have resulted in 3 local landfills containing 100% of the PCB-laden soils and sediments, or find a mediated solution to mitigate those risks, to reduce 3 potential landfills to 1, while sending the worst of the excavated material out of state, ending the legal delay, and creating opportunities for a more comprehensive cleanup with increased municipal involvement. After 18 months of deliberations with EPA and GE by our committee, all 5 of our select boards approved the mediated settlement. The vote of each board was unanimous. 5 towns, along with Pittsfield, Mass Audubon, local residents, and the Berkshire Environmental Action Team, acting as one community with a common interest to clean up the Housatonic River and return it to us and to future generations to enjoy, so that at long last, we can turn our faces, not our backs, to this beautiful winding river that connects us all. Thank you very much.
I'm not going to ask him to speak because this is still a long way to go. There's still a lot of permitting that takes place. But Mike Gorski, who's been a good friend of mine since I came into the legislature, he's always been my go-to guy on Title V questions and other things involved with the environment. But the West Region Director of DEP, Michael Gorski, is here. Thank you very much for joining us today. And I mean this is a term of endearment, but the biggest cheerleader and bulldog for the city of Pittsfield is none other than Mayor Linda Tyre, a former Lenox Town employee, I must add. But Linda has been on a fantastic job, just got reelected to her second term, and we're actually starting to see Pittsfield turn around in a very positive way. It was the economic engine of the Berkshire for so long. Lenox was always a bedroom community to General Electric in Pittsfield. And then we started charting our own course. But Pittsfield's on the rebound, and I think large in part to the leadership and the integrity of Mayor Linda Tyre. So Linda, thank you very much for joining us.
Good afternoon. It's really an honor to be here with all of you today to talk about the future of our Berkshire County. And I want to acknowledge the people that are here who are voicing their opposition. While it may not always feel like it to you, your voice does influence our thinking. The City of Pittsfield is pleased to be part of this landmark partnership that, through mutual commitments by all parties, has resolved a 20-year quandary between GE and the EPA. 20 years, and the PCBs remained in our river. With this settlement, we will embark on a comprehensive, protective, and faster cleanup of our Housatonic River that will restore the river for present and future generations. This agreement will result in the cleanup of residential properties in the city of Pittsfield and will yield multiple investments that will support the ongoing revitalization of our city, and specifically Tyler Street, as well as future economic development initiatives in our city. As all of you know, we are rebuilding our city after a post-industrial decline, and the river is a component of that. As a whole, the settlement agreement symbolizes a highly collaborative effort that has resulted in very real and viable solution. It has minimized the risks that all of us faced with ongoing, uncertain litigation. This is a solution toward the restoration of one of Berkshire County's most prized natural gems that we can all now honor. It has the potential to be used as a model for addressing other communities and their challenges and their struggle with resolving environmental issues that happen in their communities. Pittsfield is pleased to be able to offer additional aspects of this cleanup that will preserve our city for the generations to come. And the details of that will be included in the information that is shared with everyone this afternoon. But as others have said, today is just the beginning. There is a great deal of work ahead of us. This experience, the experience of all of us standing shoulder to shoulder with putting our best effort forward for our communities, has resulted in a very strong coalition that will continue to stand side by side to ensure that this agreement is upheld. Thank you, everyone, for your strength and courage in this process. We go forward together today. Thank you.
Another bulldog for the city of Pittsfield, a very passionate leader and a colleague of mine in the legislature for the last 8 years, 10 years, this seems like forever. But Tricia Farley-Bouvier is here as well to give her thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Smitty, and to all my partners in local, state, and federal government, and those who really care about our community and specifically our environment. You know, it's a little bit funny because when Smitty was putting this together, he said, would you like to make remarks? I'm like, Smitty, are you sure you want me to make remarks? Because I wasn't at the table. I represent the city of Pittsfield in the legislature, but we weren't direct parties to this. But I think I'm representative of the residents of Pittsfield because I wasn't at those talks. But I need to now, for myself and for my community, evaluate both the process and the outcome of these negotiations. And I think that that's where most of us are right now, right? Trying to learn the facts, figure out, is this a good process, and is this a good result for our community? And I'm a resident of Ward 4 in Pittsfield, and there's 5 more miles of river in Ward 4, okay? I mean, it took us 20 years to do the first 2 miles. We still have 5 more miles in Pittsfield. And the other reason I was a little worried when Smitty said, do you really want to have me up here? Because I come to this whole process as a skeptic. Okay, people who know my politics know that I'm a skeptic of corporations, a skeptic of those big entities who might put shareholders in front of our future generations. But I decided in the last few weeks as I was briefed on this to do a lot of listening and to ask some questions. And I decided as I was going to make my decision about whether this was a good thing or not, and this is kind of an ongoing process, to use the exact same metrics that I had put together for myself a few years ago when this was all coming together about rest of river. And so which constituency do I feel like I need to advocate for? And these are in priority order. The first constituency that I have to protect are my children's grandchildren and all of our children's grandchildren. The second is the residents that are in the neighborhoods that are directly impacted by this. And my first thought was in Ward 4. We have 2 neighborhoods that abut the river, but in a greater sense, we have neighborhoods all over Pittsfield, specifically around Ward 2 and the Tyler Street area. And then thirdly, it is the city of Pittsfield as a whole and our economic well-being. And of course, while I focus on Pittsfield, I'm a resident and lover of the Berkshires, and I want what's best for all of the Berkshires. And so who were at the parties? Well, I can look at Jane Wynn of BEAT, who I consider a longtime partner of mine when I do my work in the legislature, and Mass Audubon, whose primary objective is protecting our environment for future generations, our children's grandchildren. And I see Jeff Cook here and Mass Audubon, both direct neighbors in impacted properties of this. And I see Mayor Tyre, who has all of that in mind, plus the overall well-being of Pittsfield. And I say to myself, Tricia, was well represented in these negotiations, the people who had my same values in mind. And as an aside, I'm really very impressed by the 5 towns and the work that was happening there, and I feel like you were also represented. And so in summary, I'm just going to say to all of you who did this hard work, I'm impressed, I am grateful, and this skeptic trusts you. Thank you very much.
And to think she was nervous about speaking for 2 minutes. How do you think I felt about being the MC? Thank you very much, Tricia, and you've been a great partner in the legislature, and I think you're putting your priorities in the right place, so thank you so much. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Jane Wynn. As the House Chairman of the Environment Committee at the state legislature, I've gotten to know Jane a little bit better and her team, and we've agreed to disagree on some big issues, but another bulldog for the right reasons who has stepped up to the plate and came across the line here, so to speak, that we're all in this thing together. Jane Wynn from the Berkshire Environmental Action Team was part of this process, and I'm asking Jane to come up and say a few words as well.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for coming out today. Thank you for traveling far today. I'm Jane Wynn. I'm the Executive Director of the Berkshire Environmental Action Team, or BEAT. BEAT feels that this agreement is our best opportunity for a more thorough remediation project to protect the environment for wildlife. Right now, there is no containment. PCBs are spreading into the air, the water, the land, and up the food web. This agreement requires the removal of 100 acres more PCB contamination than the 2016 permit that we appealed. With the agreement signed, GE will begin the remediation process immediately, starting by doing more testing and developing work plans. And we have input into all those plans that come out and then get commented on, so please take the time to read them and comment. BEAT will be involved in developing the criteria and methods for a pilot study of vernal pool remediation that can then be applied to all the contaminated vernal pools along the rest of the river. These are small depressions that maintain water in the spring but dry up quickly. They're critical habitats that we feel are very special environments that we want to make sure our grandchildren enjoy. BEAT and our allies will always keep fighting to have the dumps in Berkshire County and beyond thoroughly remediated as alternative technologies become available. And in this agreement, EPA has committed in writing to identifying opportunities to apply existing and potential future research resources to PCB treatment technologies. Thank you for HRI for pushing so strongly on this. EPA has committed also to soliciting input and working with all stakeholders as the cleanup design progresses. We hope all interested parties will provide their input as this process moves forward. Thank you.
I'm glad you mentioned HRI because I think other than our next speaker, I think Tim Gray probably has the longest history of this river. But Jeff Cook, yep. Jeff Cook, a resident along that river as well, probably has just as long a history in many ways as well. And Jeff was one of the original members of the Citizens Coordinating Council, whose primary focus was on that residential cleanup. So Jeff Cook, thank you very much for joining us here today.
Senator Markey and Congressman Ritchie, if I may, and all the other federal officials here, and most important, the local officials. Yeah, I'm probably one of the oldest guys in the room, and I've had a love affair with the river, which I got introduced to for kayaking originally, then canoe racing, and then back to kayaking. And I care a great deal about the floodplain that is on part of my property. There's nobody in this room who's getting everything that she wants in this resolution of this big challenge. Back in the days when we started to talk about the consent decree, it was very clear to those of us who were involved in trying to put our arms around this challenge that this was not going to get resolved in our lifetimes if it was going to be litigated and litigated again. So for me, the consent decree was a critically important accomplishment, and we wouldn't be standing here today if we didn't. And so now we're 20 years later, and we're looking at potentially more litigation, more appeals, and we still have people living with an uncertainty about where this is going and what are the health risks for our population. Frankly, I wish there was less of a cleanup, because I do not know how you deal with the core one sensitive areas, moving in 10,000 truckloads in and out a year, and not destroy that resource. But I know that we have to move forward with the cleanup. No one has really talked about until now the fact that there are people living on both sides of the floodplain who will wait years to see what the impact is going to be, and then have to live with the work that's being done, and live with the uncertainty of how they can sell a home, what they face. For that uncertainty to continue without us going forward together as a community is really unacceptable. It's time that we started to really deal with the details. For me, the fact that we have a quality of life compliance plan built into this resolution is for the first time a recognition of the impact of the people who are my neighbors, my friends, who have a future of, until we deal with this as a community together, of real uncertainty and impact. So there isn't really a choice of dealing with this as a dispute. And I have to say that these 5 people sitting here who have represented EPA, with whom I've had, I would say, lively discussions over the last several years, I totally trust them. I don't agree with them on everything, but I totally trust them and their commitment to do the right thing for everyone in this room and everybody else in Berkshire County. So if you deal with the art of the doable, this is the best road forward, even though there are many things about it that some of us could argue about. It is time to get this done. We lawyers could get you another 20 years of fighting, another 20 years of uncertainty, another 20 years of lack of containment and cleanup. Or we can come together. We live in crazy times. Communities must come together, argue, talk, support each other, and come up with a resolution like this. I have to say that my buddy Smitty has seen this right from the start in terms of what had to be done, and the energy and commitment that he has brought to this is something that everybody should really appreciate, because he is the guy who has really made this happen, and I will always be appreciative for it. I also want to thank all of you for coming and caring about this, because it's a really big deal. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jeff. How's everybody doing? Only 8 more speakers. Just kidding. We're down to 2, and 2 people that I've developed a tremendous amount of respect for, one at the state level and one here at the local level. But from the Mass Audubon, the Regional Director for Central and Western Mass Sanctuaries, Steve Hutchinson, please come forward, and Mass Audubon's Director here locally in the Berkshires for the Berkshire Sanctuaries, Becky Cushing. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. We'll keep this brief. Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Hutchinson, Regional Director for Mass Audubon Central West Region. Since Mass Audubon was founded in 1896, we have believed in the importance of protecting natural areas for wildlife and for all people. Today, as Massachusetts' largest nature conservation nonprofit, we protect more than 38,000 acres of land across our state and strive to make nature accessible to all. On behalf of Mass Audubon, we are pleased to stand alongside other parties to this settlement agreement. An agreement that requires more overall removal of PCBs from the river and allows the design and sampling work to begin almost immediately. Mass Audubon has participated in the Housatonic River cleanup discussions and public comments since the 1980s. Our team of scientists, policy analysts, and educators have always advocated for a thorough cleanup and the removal of PCBs from the environment while ensuring that a healthy Housatonic River ecosystem is restored.
Hi, my name is Becky Cushing. I'm the director for Mass Audubon's Berkshire Wildlife Sanctuaries. And Mass Audubon, has engaged in the Housatonic River cleanup process both as a statewide conservation organization as well as a directly impacted landowner and steward of our 250-acre wildlife sanctuary, Canoe Meadows Wildlife Sanctuary in Pittsfield. Since the 1940s, we've worked in the schools and alongside the communities to protect people and to connect people with nature. The Housatonic River is one of our most important natural resources and offers tremendous benefits to our community, from outdoor recreation to stormwater management. But right now, it harbors toxic materials. This agreement to clean the river will allow us to reclaim it. We envision a future where generations can live and work alongside the river without worry of its contamination. We truly look forward to working together with the EPA, the towns, the city of Pittsfield, environmental groups, and residents to restore a healthy Housatonic River ecosystem that can be enjoyed by future generations of Berkshire residents and visitors. Thank you.
Thank you both very much. There's a young man who's doing a documentary, and I was talking to him before this program started, and he thought this would be the end of the documentary, this segment of the announcement of this river cleanup. I think it's just the beginning. I think there's an awful lot more work to do. There's much more dialogue to take place. Well, if you will listen to me for like 2 more minutes, you will have plenty of opportunities to talk here. Okay, thank you very much. But like I say, it's not the end. I think it's just the beginning. There's much more dialogue to take place between all the parties involved and the DEP and everybody else. But I've long believed this river is such an asset to all of us here in Western Massachusetts, but we've never treated it as an asset. Yes, General Electric is dumped in there, but so didn't the paper mills, so didn't municipalities all along this river. We have an opportunity to change the narrative, in my opinion. I'm glad Jonathan Butler's here from One Berkshire. We should be promoting this river as an asset. Let the world know that we're open for business for recreation. Senator Hines and I have been working on this outdoor recreational secretariat level position in the state government to recognize how important our natural resources are to those of us here in the Berkshires. So that's where I think the narrative has an opportunity to change. There's fact sheets here. Please take your fact sheets. Please develop your questions. There are going to be listening sessions, and I'll give you the dates right now. Wednesday, February 19th at 6 p.m. at the Lee High School. Thursday, February 20th at 6 p.m. at Monument Mountain High School. And I believe there is a third one trying to be pulled together as well, and I assume the city of Pittsfield will have one as well. But I hope that if we can change that narrative and be better informed with what this is really all about, I wanted this thing to be here today. I thought it was so appropriate to have it here on the banks of Woods Pond, one of the most spectacular areas of this entire river, but yet one of the most heavily contaminated. I wanted it here with October Mountain as the backdrop, the largest state forest in all of the Commonwealth. That's what we have right before us, and I think it's up to all of us to continue to work together whether we agree to disagree, whether we can disagree on everything or nothing or something. It's an opportunity to change that narrative. So I personally appreciate you all being here, and I think there's a lot more work to do. I'm continuing to learn. I thank all of the people who spoke here today. I've learned an awful lot more today, and I think we all have a lot more to learn. And we have a lot more to learn to teach the residents along this river from here all the way down through Connecticut. So thank you all very much for being here. Don't forget February 19th, 6 p.m., and February 20th at 6 p.m. at Mighty Mountain High School. Thank you all very much for being here.
This was how the whole process. This is symbolic of the entire process.